The story you are about to hear seems ripped straight from a Hollywood film, but it happened in reality. This is a story about human courage, about skill, and about how one person can stand against what seems impossible. We are speaking of an event that occurred in the skies over Assam, India, in the distant year of 1943. An event that changed the lives of many people and left a mark on the history of World War II. An event that deserves to be known by everyone who is interested in aviation history and demonstrations of the human spirit. Today I will tell you the story of a man who stood alone face to face with the tide of the enemy. The story of Second Lieutenant Philip Adair, a man whose name should be written in golden letters in the history of combat aviation. This is one of the most incredible stories of World War II. Pay close attention, because what you are about to witness is an unfolding tale of extraordinary heroism. Philip R. Adair was not the most famous pilot in the United States Army Air Forces. He was not among the best of the best, not an ace with a dozen victories. But Adair was brave. He was the kind of man who did not hesitate and did not hide when his hour came. Adair served with the 23rd Fighter Squadron, known as the Burma Banshees. This was a combat unit fighting in one of the most dangerous theaters of war. In the Far East, where the skies were a constant battleground, where every flight could be the last. Adair's base was located in Assam, in northeastern India. It was a strategically important area, and the Japanese frequently conducted raids on this territory. When the war in the Pacific began, American pilots quickly understood that they were facing one of the most formidable opponents they had ever encountered. Japanese pilots were trained, experienced, and ruthless. The aircraft they flew, especially the legendary Mitsubishi A6M0, were revolutionary machines. They were fast, maneuverable, and deadly. The American P-40 Warhawk, the aircraft Adair flew, was reliable but not the most advanced. It was not called the best fighter of the war, but in the hands of an experienced pilot, this machine became a weapon. The P-40 was tough, difficult to shoot down, it could handle significant damage and still return to base. It was the workhorse of American aviation. In 1943, the war was in full swing. The Japanese Empire still possessed considerable military power despite gradual losses on different fronts. Japanese air raids on American bases were still commonplace. Adair and his comrades were ready for any challenge. December 14th. A day that would prove fateful for the young pilot of the 23rd Squadron. On this day, Adair did not know that his name would enter history forever. He did not know that he would perform an act of heroism that people would talk about around the world. But fate was preparing for him an encounter that would test every fiber of his body, every nerve ending in his brain. December 13th, 1943. The day began like any other day. Adair was on duty, ready to take to the air at any moment. His aircraft, a P-40 named Lulu Belle, a nickname for his sweetheart back home, waited on the runway. The aircraft was armed and ready for combat. Around midday, the alarm sounded. Dispatchers intercepted radio signals indicating the approach of a large formation of enemy aircraft. The Japanese were preparing another raid on the base. Combat fighters were immediately scrambled. Pilots ran to their machines, started engines, prepared for takeoff. Adair was first. His P-40 was the first to leave the ground. He climbed to altitude, eyes fixed on the sky, searching for the enemy. At that time, the rest of the squadron pilots were still preparing for takeoff. Adair was alone. Completely alone in the sky. Minutes later, his radio transmission came through. Unknown contacts to the northwest. Numbers not yet determined. Altitude 20,000 feet. Course toward the base. Adair turned onto the indicated heading. His heart beat faster. There it was. The beginning of another day when life hung by a thread. At first, Adair sees only small silhouettes in the sky. From a distance, they look like a small group. Perhaps 4 or 5 aircraft. He pushes the throttle forward, flies faster. He needs to get a complete picture of the situation. He needs to understand what lies before him. Adair approaches. And then the scale of what he sees overwhelms him. It is not 4 aircraft. Not 5. Before him unfolds a formidable formation. Bombers and fighters. The Japanese had assembled an impressive combat group. The count is in the dozens. Perhaps 60. Perhaps even more. Adair maneuvers, trying to determine the exact number. He counts bombers, heavy machines, loaded with bombs. Around them circle fighters, their escort. This is a battle order, formed into a combat group designed to destroy his base. Radio call. Adair reports to the base. Massive combat group. Approximately 60 aircraft. Possibly more. They are heading toward us. His voice is calm, professional, despite being confronted with enemy numbers that by any standard of military aviation are considered absolutely superior. At the base, they hear his report and understand, this is serious. This is not a small raid, not a couple of bombers looking for targets. This is a full-scale combat formation that wants to destroy their airfield. At this moment, the base begins emergency protective measures. Men take positions, prepare air defense systems. But all this takes time. And at this moment, Adair reaches a point of decision. He can retreat, return to base, allow the enemy to draw closer. Or he can attack. Alone. Completely alone. He can try to impede the enemy, slow them down, shoot down several aircraft, to give his base time to prepare. Adair makes his choice. He will attack. Philippar. Adair points the nose of his P-40 toward the hostile formation. Behind him lie Assam and the American base. Before him lie 64 Japanese aircraft. A ratio of 1 to 64. This is not just an unequal battle. It seems simply impossible. But Adair is a fighter. He understands that these bombers carry death for the people he knows. Death for his comrades who are now taking positions on the base. Death for mechanics, for officers, for ordinary soldiers who serve at his aerodrome. If these bombers reach their target, people will die. Adair's strategy is simple but demands true mastery. He will attack the bombers. The fighters are a threat, but the primary danger is the bombers. If he can prevent them from dropping their load on his base, if he can disrupt their formation, minimize the damage, that will be victory. But there is one problem. If he begins to attack the fighters, he will lose the advantage of surprise. Japanese fighters will surround him and his aircraft will be shot down in minutes. Therefore, his first maneuver must be directed at the bombers. Adair enters the combat formation from altitude. His P-40 peels into a dive, gathering speed. Before him the silhouettes of the enemy become increasingly distinct. He sees them in all their details, fuselages, wings, protruding machine gun barrels. He closes to firing range. Adair's fingers find the trigger. His 6.50 caliber machine guns begin to roar. Fire tears through the sky. Shells fly through the air, tracer rounds glow brightly in the midday sun. First strike. Adair aims at the lead bomber. His machine guns spit fire. Rounds pierce the enemy aircraft's fuselage. The machine begins to smoke. Fire erupts in the cockpit. The pilot loses control. The bomber falls from formation. First enemy defeated. Adair prepares his second attack. But at this moment, Japanese fighters begin appearing from all directions. They see that his base is under attack by a single American, and they descend upon him with fury. Zeros, Ki-44s, Ki-61s, all swarm toward the P-40. Adair realizes he has caught the tiger by the tail. Around him, enemies circle. He pulls out of the dive, climbs to altitude. His P-40 begins to maneuver. Left, right, turns, more turns. The Earth seems very far away. The sky before him is a labyrinth of hostility. Every aircraft he sees wants his death. But Adair has one advantage. He knows these Assam skies. He has flown here dozens of times. He knows every valley, every hill, every wind current. And most importantly, he knows that his P-40 can withstand damage. Above Assam unfolds an aerial ballet of death. Adair whirls in the sky, his aircraft turns at extreme angles of attack. G-forces press against his body. Blood rushes in his ears. His vision becomes tunnel-like. But he does not lose the ability to focus. Every maneuver is calculated. Every turn is an attempt to create advantage. Around him swarms a hail of bullets. Tracer rounds fly past his canopy. Anti-aircraft fire from left, from right. Above him, below him. The sky around Adair transforms into a living organism that tries to destroy him. But Adair does not give up. Each time he sees an opportunity, he rolls his P-40, points his machine guns toward the enemy and presses the trigger. His ammunition is expended quickly. Each shot is an investment in his survival. 20 minutes. This is approximately how long this aerial clash lasts above Assam. 20 minutes that seem like an eternity. Adair feels that something is wrong. The first of his machine guns fell silent. Then the second. He has nearly exhausted his ammunition supply. Logic tells him to retreat. Logic insists, "You have done enough. You have protected the base. Now go. Live another day." But Adair is not a man of logic at this moment. He is a man of action. A man who sees the enemy and continues to fight. He has very little ammunition left. Perhaps a few hundred rounds from the millions he has fired into the sky over these 20 minutes. But he does not fold his wings. Instead, as his machine guns run dry, Adair attempts a new tactic. He banks sharply, his wings zigzag through the sky. Before him, a formation of Japanese fighters. Adair executes a maneuver that demonstrates true piloting mastery. He dives, turns, climbs. His P-40, though lacking the speed and altitude advantage of Japanese fighters, possesses one invaluable advantage: the ability to perform sharp turns at low speeds. To compensate for his lack of ammunition, Adair uses his aircraft itself. He behaves like a hunter who realizes he has no more weapons but still has teeth and claws. Each time a Japanese fighter attempts to attack him, Adair enters a sharp turn. The Japanese pilot, expecting to follow him, suddenly finds himself defenseless before the enemy's guns. At this stage of the battle, Japanese pilots begin to experience confusion. They have heard of the man who does not give up. They call him the Silver Demon of the Sky. His behavior seems impossible. His aircraft should be shot down. But it remains in the sky, it continues to maneuver, it continues to distract them from their task, bombing the base. At this point, the formation of bombers that followed the combat escort begins to fall behind their planned route. They see their escorts fear this man. They see his combat qualities. Many pilots begin to understand they will not be able to deliver their strike. This American has prevented them from achieving their objective. Adair does not know how many enemies he shot down in the sky above Assam. Some sources say 5. Some say 7. Some claim even more. The exact number may never be established. But what is known for certain is that his actions achieved their goal. As the bombers approached Adair's base, they began receiving fire from anti-aircraft artillery that had finally been ready to meet them. The flak guns thunder. They also add their contribution. Several bombers are damaged or shot down. The enemy's battle formation begins to disintegrate. The order comes, sound the retreat. The bombers begin their withdrawal. They cannot break through the defenses. They cannot deliver the strike they planned. Adair sees the enemy retreating. He sees the formation that seemed invincible beginning to turn and withdraw from his base. His task is complete. His mission is accomplished. But his own troubles are only beginning. In the heat of battle, his P-40 has sustained damage. Considerable damage. Shell fragments have pierced his wings. Bullets have created holes in the fuselage. Oil leaks from his engine. His radiator is damaged. Adair directs his tattered aircraft back toward the base. Each movement of the control stick is a trial. The aircraft does not fully obey his commands. His left wing sits slightly lower. His engine works unevenly, surging. Behind him, in the sky, enemies still remain. They see wounded prey and want to deliver the final blow. Several Japanese fighters attempt to intercept him. Adair enters a dive, rushing toward the earth. The ground approaches rapidly. Very rapidly. Too rapidly. His engine begins to smoke. A voice from combat control screams into his radio. "Accelerate! They are almost on you!" Adair sees the runway. His aerodrome. His home. He levels the aircraft, preparing to land. His speed is very high. Too high for a safe landing. But he has no choice. His P-40 touches the earth with a crash. The wheels bounce. The fuselage shakes. The tail hook engages. Finally, he stops. Adair opens the cockpit canopy. Smoke pours from his aircraft. Fire begins to erupt on the wings. He unfastens his seatbelts and jumps out. Mechanics run toward him with fire extinguishers. Adair falls to his knees on the ground, grateful to be alive. His aircraft, Lulu Bell, burns covered in smoke. Within minutes it will be completely destroyed by fire. But the pilot lives. Adair lives. At the base, they are waiting for him. Officers, mechanics, soldiers, all want to hear his story. All want to know what happened in the sky. At the debriefing, Adair describes the enemy combat formation. His decision to attack. The maneuvers he executed. The bombers he managed to damage or shoot down. His ammunition running dry in the final minutes. His comrades listen with open mouths. They know something incredible happened. They understand that this man did something that seems impossible. At this moment, one of the officers asks Adair, "Lieutenant, were you afraid?" Adair answers simply, "Sir, I did what I had to do. I did my duty." This is not false modesty. This is not an attempt to appear composed. This is Adair's true understanding of the meaning of military duty. He did not see himself as a hero. He saw himself as a pilot doing his job. But reality was different. Adair was a hero. He was a man who took to the sky with full awareness that he might not return. He was a man who stood face to face with an enemy that seemed insurmountable and did not retreat. His deeds saved lives. If he had not attacked this combat formation, if he had retreated, if he had allowed the bombers to reach his base unopposed, people would have died. His comrades would have died. His story spreads throughout military aviation over time. The Japanese, for their part, begin calling him the Silver Demon of the Sky. They speak of a pilot who cannot be killed. They speak of a man who single-handedly took on an entire squadron. Adair receives an award for his heroism. The Silver Star. It is an honor, recognition of his bravery. But for Adair, this is not the main thing. The main thing is that his comrades remained alive. The main thing is that the base was protected. In military aviation there is a saying, "A pilot exists in a state of constant fear and constant courage." Fear and courage go hand in hand. Adair felt fear. Of course he did. Only a fool would not feel fear when bullets fly around him and shells explode. But courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is the ability to act despite fear. Courage is the choice to move forward when logic says retreat. Courage is what Adair possessed in the skies above Assam. After the war, Adair continued his aviation career. He remained a pilot. The war ended, but his service continued. He was a man who understood the value of military duty. He understood that there is a thin line between life and death, and that line is guarded by people willing to protect it. When we look at the history of combat aviation in World War II, we see numerous examples of heroism. We see aces who shot down dozens and hundreds of aircraft. We see combat groups that executed grand operations. But the story of Philippe Adair remains unique in its scale and in its nature. One man. One aircraft. 64 enemies. These are not just numbers. This is a metaphor for the human spirit, its ability to overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles. Assam was not the most famous battle in World War II history. It was not a massive air operation with hundreds of aircraft on both sides. It was a small episode in a great war. But for the people on the base in Assam, it was the center of their world. There is another important point in Adair's story. His strategy was not based on hatred of the enemy. It was based on understanding his own responsibility. His comrades depended on him. People at the base depended on his decisions. This was what drove him forward. In an age when wars are conducted differently, when military machines become increasingly automated, Adair's story reminds us of something important. It reminds us that at the center of every war, at the center of every battle, stands a human being. A human with a name, with a story, with a family waiting for him at home. Adair was such a man. He was a man who stood in defense of his comrades. He was a man who fulfilled his duty as he understood it. Often in the history of war, we honor the memory of great battles, grand operations. But let us not forget the people who fought alone, who stood on the front lines, who made the choice between life and death. Adair's story is a story of self-sacrifice. It is a story about how one man can change the course of events. It is a story about military duty, understood in its true sense. When we speak of war heroes, we often speak of generals who planned campaigns, of commanders who issued orders. But we must also remember the people who carried out those orders. People who carried out orders not because they feared punishment, but because they understood the meaning of their duty. The story of Philippe Adair is a story that must remain in our memory. It is a story about how the human spirit can overcome seemingly impossible circumstances. It is a story about how one man can become a beacon of hope for many. December 14, 1943. The day when a miracle occurred in the Indian sky. Not a divine miracle, but a miracle of human courage, human skill, human determination not to surrender in the face of danger. If you remember only one thing from our conversation, remember this: one person with a clear conscience, with faith in their cause, and with the willingness to sacrifice can change the world. Adair did not change the world in a literal sense. But he changed the lives of the people whose lives he saved through his heroism. His aircraft, the P-40 Warhawk named Lulu Bell, was shot down. But Adair himself remained alive, and his spirit remained unconquered. This symbolizes that true victory is not merely material, it is inner invincibility. When historians describe World War II, they speak of millions dead, of destroyed cities, of deep suffering. And all of this is true. But Adair's story reminds us that amid all this pain and destruction were people willing to stand in defense of others. People who preferred the risk of death to living with the burden of unfulfilled duty. The annals of combat aviation are full of examples of human heroism. But the case of 1 against 64 remains striking in its simplicity and in its grandeur. This was not complex strategy. This was simple will to fight. Today, when wars are conducted by other means, when heroism often remains unknown to the public, we must remember stories like Adair's. We must remember that in every person lies the capacity for heroism. The capacity to stand when it is right and say, "I will fight. Not today, enemy. Not today." Philippe Adair proved that one person can stand against great numbers. He proved that skill, willingness to risk, and faith in one's mission can overcome even the worst odds. His story is an eternal lesson for all who face challenges that seem insurmountable. When you hear this story, ask yourself, would I have had the courage to do the same? Would I have dared to fly alone against 64? Most of us will honestly say no. But there is no shame in that. Honor lies in respecting those who demonstrated such courage. Honor lies in remembering their names and their deeds. Philip R. Adair's story is a story that inspires. It inspires because it is true. It inspires because it shows us the potential of the human spirit. It inspires because it says, yes, it is possible. Yes, one person can change everything. Thank you for being with us on this journey. Thank you for hearing the story of a man who rose to the sky and said no to the enemy. A story that should never be forgotten. A story that will live as long as there are people who value courage, honor, and self-sacrifice. Adair returned home. The war ended. But his legacy remains, an eternal reminder that the human spirit cannot be broken. Thank you.